The Global Child Protection Working Group, the international coordinating body for protecting girls and boys in humanitarian settings, has produced a video series on the minimum standards for child protection in humanitarian action. These minimum standards, also known as the CPMS, were developed through widespread interagency collaboration. They are one of the companions to the Sphere standards. This video examines Standard 10, Psychosocial Distress and Mental Disorders. Standard 10 states that girls' and boys' coping mechanisms and resilience are strengthened, and severely affected children are receiving appropriate support. Let's explore a few common terms. Mental health and psychosocial support, or MPHSS, highlights the need for diverse and complementary approaches from both health and child protection professionals as well as others. Coping mechanism refers to the process of adapting to a new life situation, managing difficult circumstances, and trying to reduce stress. A child's coping mechanism, life skills, family relationships, and his or her environment will have a direct impact on individual resilience. This is the capacity to face, overcome, and even be strengthened by the adversities of life. It is also known as the power to bounce back. The resilience of an individual child or community can be strengthened ahead of a crisis, as can the capacity of an agency. Child protection actors should prepare for disaster. For example, map MPHSS services and create a referral pathway. However, too often, such measures are not in place when an emergency strikes. We know that the psychosocial well-being of many children and communities who live through a disaster will be affected. However, the length and severity of a child's reaction will vary. These variances stem from a number of factors, such as his or her stage of development, inherent coping mechanisms, family support, etc.
We recognize that, in fact, for most children, they don't develop mental health problems. They don't develop unusual symptoms of distress. They develop symptoms of distress, but we expect them. We expect them because they've just been through a terrible time.
This is why having a psychosocial support is necessary in such times, as it provides the children with a safe place and a better community by which they could cope in. They receive all the support they need, whether it's educational, psychosocial support, mental health, hygiene-related issues, or nutrition-related issues.
Indeed, all humanitarian actors have the opportunity and duty to relieve the psychological distress of emergency-affected communities. This is often achieved by small adjustments to how one works.
Because of the flood, there was famine. We will know that out of this famine, people will be affected psychologically, and therefore there is need to address the psychological needs as well as the famine and the hunger.
Ananda Galpati explains what happened when the setup for latrines and washing in one Sri Lankan IDP camp caused distress amongst some women and girls.
One of the ways in which MPHSS actors integrated some of these concerns that were clearly impacting the well-being of the people in the camps was to work closely with the water and sanitation providers to actually consult with women, men, and very importantly children around what the most appropriate places might be to place the toilets.
MPHSS can include a wide range of interventions and approaches. The Interagency Standing Committee's intervention pyramid shows the multi-layered support that meets the needs of different groups. All layers are important and should ideally be implemented at the same time. The first level aims to meet basic survival needs and ensure that safety and security have returned. The way these services are provided should take into consideration mental health and psychosocial well-being. Most children and adolescents will go back to functioning normally without professional help when these basic needs are met. However, some children may need specific assistance to restore the usual protective factors. This could mean giving them a safe place where they can play again with their peers and relieve stress. The third layer represents the still smaller number of children, for example, survivors of sexual violence or recruitment, who need focused individual, family, or group support. This might be psychological first aid, structured psychosocial groups with children or parents, etc. The top layer of the pyramid represents approximately 5% of the population who, despite the support already mentioned, need specialized services. Though this seems small, when 100,000 people are displaced, that equates to 5,000 new individuals. These children may, for example, have pre-existing mental health disorders worsened by the disaster. Our goal is to strengthen the ability of families and communities to support one another. Girls, boys, women, and men should be active partners in decisions that affect their lives. For example, involvement in relief efforts, initiatives for older children to work with younger ones, parent committees, re-establishment of traditional community support mechanisms.
Our goal is to facilitate natural systems, to facilitate families and communities to take care of their own children. Then it's easier for the worker to go in and go, oh, I need to talk to the families and communities. I think it's how we begin and how we explain to workers what our actual role is. Our standards clearly talk about helping people to help themselves.
As we saw, MPHSS interventions aim to strengthen resilience and coping mechanisms. These are often difficult to measure. However, to ensure quality programming, we must use rigorous approaches to M&E and adopt evidence-based best practices.
Key elements of a good MPHSS program are, firstly, that the program be developed based on an accurate and systematic assessment of the needs and priorities for children in that community. Secondly, that the program build on and mobilize resources that exist in the community, but also supplement these where necessary. A program needs to be attentive to the fact that services and supports need to be sustainable. A good M&E system is also vital and would help a program to both reorient to changing needs over time, but also improve where it's failing to meet needs. A key element that is required would also be staff that are appropriately skilled and have the knowledge required to intervene with potentially vulnerable children and their families. And these human resources also need the technical and personal support required to work in what are often very difficult circumstances.
Children should be involved at all stages of our work, even with M&E.
We have a child-led process, monitoring and evaluation, and one particular thing the children do is to set their own goals, and they monitor the progress of this goal right from the beginning up to the end. At the end of that model, the children evaluate at the sessions on how it went, what they have learned out of it, what they feel it should be improved, and what they feel is okay. For example, they are able to give suggestions that certain games do not apply in our context.
We often don't acknowledge that we as humanitarian staff also experience psychosocial distress. Regular supervision for ourselves and our colleagues will help us cope and continue our work most effectively.
Get up every morning and think about what you can do today, right? And talk about with colleagues about what you can do. I think trying to work in isolation is another mistake in the field, right? Is recognizing that you should have colleagues. You should share your distress because everybody has the same distress, right? So it's a matter of being part of a team. It's about trying to work together to manage a very, very difficult situation.
In sum, mental health and psychosocial support should be an integral element of humanitarian intervention. Our primary approach is to facilitate children, families, and communities to take an active part in rebuilding their lives. Poor quality programming can do harm, so be rigorous and accountable in your work. Create a robust M&E system and provide regular staff supervision. For resources beyond the CPMS, refer to the CPWG website or mhpss.net. And finally, as People in Aid reported, one of the central factors in the success of humanitarian action has been the dedication of staff. ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Take care of yourself and your colleagues by putting in place practical, personal support measures. Other installments in this series focus on how to use the CPMS and on the specific standards for addressing needs. The CPWG provides support for applying the standards, such as mainstreaming briefs, guidance on contextual adaptation, and training packages. For more information, please go to cpwg.net/minimum-standards and mhpss.net.